Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and we are joined by Adam Kokesh here in Acapulco, Mexico for Anarchapulco 2017. And of course, Adam is the author of Freedom. He has put out incredible videos for years and years and years, something I've been paying attention all the way back to the Winter Soldier, I think back in 2007 that was. And I've watched him change and I've changed with him, and you know, I'm always happy to actually talk to him in person. So thanks for joining us.
Hey, it's an honor as always.
Absolutely. Now, you told us almost a year ago that you thought Donald Trump was Hillary Clinton limited hangout. Now,
hold on that count, in and of itself, I was proven right in that the Hillary Clinton campaign emails revealed that they wanted the mainstream media to blow up him and Cruz and Carson because they thought they would be the easiest opponents of the Clinton campaign. But of course, we know how that backfired on them.
Well, of course, and we saw in the WikiLeaks information that, as you kind of mentioned, as you alluded to, they propped up the Trump campaign thinking that they're going to win because Trump was such a, well, I don't know what you call
terrible candidate.
Yeah, and that's saying something compared.
Only a deplorable could possibly vote for Trump.
Exactly, and now I'd like to kind of ask, do you still think he's a limited hangout now that he's won? I mean, I just want to go over a few quick things here. Of course, he is shrinking the government to some extent. You know, get rid of 2 regulations for every 1 regulation, which is a pragmatic, it's pragmatically a good thing, but he's also growing the government in many other ways. And of course,
you don't have to fill out this form and this form, but we're going to, in exchange for that, make you give us 90% of your income instead.
Yeah, an asset forfeiture.
Counting regulations is not measuring freedom.
No, exactly. Now, would you still think that he is a limited hangout in one way or another? I mean, we see so much divide, especially in our movement. I mean, while we are seeing new anarchists all the time, we've also seen a lot of them.
We've never lost as many who I suppose we never had in the first place, you could say. But in terms of my opinion on Trump, I'd like to sort of back up and explain how I see elections in general, because if you're the powers that be, and you want a good front man, a good sales rep for the destructive government, corporatist banking racket, you don't want to just say, all right, people, here's your candidate. You want to say, here's your pre-selected choice of candidates from whom you get to choose of all of these terrible options, and either one is okay with us, but go ahead. You know, now it looks like a real race, and actually it is a genuine competition. I don't think elections are selections in the sense that a lot of people, I think, go a little too far with that analysis and will say that the superclass picks you and picks you and picks you, and it's like, no, they keep out people who are a real threat. Someone like Ron Paul obviously is a great recent example of that, but they want there to be a genuine competition. They want the American people to in a vigorous election debate to choose who would be the best from that limited selection.
To believe in the process to some extent.
Not just that, but it also results in the superclass getting the best possible front man. It's an audition. You know, they want someone who's going to be able to pacify the American people as best they can, and the only way to find out, I mean, if you think about it, if I'm the ruling elite superclass and I know how the system works and I want a president who's going to fulfill that role, I want an audition, and if anything, actually, I want someone who really believes his own crap. You know, like, I think that's maybe more true at the level of Congress and the Senate, where there are a lot of, let's just say, useful idiots, to be nice. I mean, they're kind of willing participants and they play along.
You're a lot nicer than I am.
Well, I think most members of Congress genuinely believe most of what they're saying. And they've been selected largely because of that. So with Donald Trump, you said limited hangout. I don't think I use the term limited hangout, so I just want to be clear about that because I don't know exactly how different people define that term. But no, he's a lower member of the superclass who's filling a particular role, and he's generally going to do his job because he wasn't elected on a fundamental shift in the paradigm. Aside from the one thing that there's one thing that I really do appreciate about Donald Trump, and that is how he is genuinely and enthusiastically and with style taken on the mainstream media. But then again, you can only give him a little bit of credit for that because he's more riding the wave that people like you and I have created.
Absolutely. Well, obviously, we saw with the deep state's relationship with, say, the Obama-Romney campaign, that there was a significant failure to make it look like there was a competition, because, of course, they were almost exactly alike. And but moving on from that,
and I would point out, like, when you really wake up and you realize what are the important issues, what is significant in terms of moving past this paradigm of statism, what is the most destructive part of government, Trump and Clinton are still essentially the same.
Yeah.
They believe in a corporatist system. They believe in the banking system. Mm-hmm. They believe in a strong military, which is bad for national defense. They believe in the police state. They believe in taxation. You know, all these fundamental things. And like you mentioned earlier, how it's sad to see that a lot of people who we thought were in the freedom movement are now part of the Trump movement, whatever you want to call it. And I think there's a very specific failure there, or a few failures, but that you could point to. The most important being that if you don't keep that in sight, if you don't maintain that perspective, it's really easy to be distracted by potential short-term gains in individual policies, rather than looking at, well, what is the long term, what are we really working towards? And the problem with that is that it allows you to be fooled. And the way when I look at that, I don't get angry at these people, I don't cry over spilled milk, but I think, wow, there are so many people who call themselves libertarians and yet are wasting effort, not just supporting Trump, but now like twisting their own logic to justify his positions, which is really sad, when that energy could instead be spent waking people up, bringing new people into the message.
Well, these people are stuck. These people are stuck now for 4 years. They have to defend this guy no matter what he does, going against all their points of view. Alex Jones has to defend the police state. Stefan Molyneux has to, defend stop and frisk. I mean, it's insane. It's like an absolute paradigm shift, and not in a good way. But
I wasn't going to name names, but since you did,
well, yeah, I like to call them out when I see them. But with that said,
I'm sorry, I got to jump in with another sidebar there, because I've learned this the hard way. I've been a full-time activist for 10 years now, and I've made every single mistake possible in the political or anti-political activist handbook. And one thing that I really want to emphasize here, and I appreciate being intellectually critical or respectful that way, but if you, like, Stefan Molyneux is doing awesome work. Alex Jones is doing awesome work. These men are doing incredible, critical work that is moving humanity towards freedom. Even within my worldview, I want to celebrate that. I celebrate Donald Trump as a sign that, hey, the majority of the Republican base is so desperate for something anti-establishment, they'll go with Donald Trump, and that Bernie Sanders won the Democratic primary. Yeah. And that's a sign that the majority of people in America who call themselves Democrats are looking for something fundamentally philosophically different. If anything, I think for our movement, that's where the low-hanging fruit is right now. When I have that, like, deep love for someone, not Trump and Sanders, but people like Molyneux and Jones, when I really have that deep love and appreciation for what they're doing and what they represent, I would never want to do anything to harm their effort or get in the way of that. I want to be positive and encouraging and motivating, and people should be consuming their media. It's paradigm shifting stuff. It's great. It's good for me that people are watching that media. So like you'll never, I want to say like I'm perfect, because like I said, I've made all the mistakes, but if I can, you'll never hear me say anything publicly, at least, that would in any way negatively impact their ability to do their good work.
No, you're pragmatically respectful towards these people, and of course they're doing great work, but I'm just very disappointed that they'd take this hook, line, and sinker. And so it was hard for a lot of us. There's a lot of us in the movement. Even the most ideological anarchists had to really test themselves this election, because it seemed like something different was happening. But people have to look past, well, there's a few differentiations, but to the fact that, look, this is still statism. This is still the same old stuff. You look at the cabinets, it's the same old thing that we saw with Obama and Bush and Clinton, etc.
Or worse.
Or worse, and people will fall for it. And it's unfortunate, but it is a really hard thing to keep psychologically strong and separate yourself from that. But
I won't pull punches for General Mattis.
No.
I committed war crimes with him.
Yeah.
Like, not personally in the same room. He was a general, I was a sergeant, but I committed war crimes in Fallujah in 2004 under his command.
Yeah, and it takes a strong man to admit what he's done wrong, and then you move forward, right? And I wanted to, with that said, I wanted to kind of go into, like, you ran for Congress, you regretted running for Congress, but you're also running for...
I don't live with regret.
Okay, yeah, you wish you didn't, but I mean...
No, I'm glad for the experience, and I'm glad that I learned from it the way that I did, and the fundamental strategic mistake I made was putting a modicum of trust in the Republican Party establishment, which was a modicum too much, and I don't feel like it was a wasted effort at all, because even in that congressional race, we really kept in mind that what we were doing was shifting the paradigm and waking up people.
Well, with that said, I kind of wanted to go into your 2020 not-for-president run, and can you kind of explain what your plan is? Like, what do you hope to accomplish by running for not president in 2020?
Well, I would say I'm running for president, but that's such a terribly evil thing to say, and so I'm running for not president. That is, I'm running on the platform of the peaceful, orderly dissolution of the entire federal government. And as for the platform, the plan is extremely simple: to go in on the first day, sign one executive order in which I resign. What parts of government would I eliminate? Oh, just the executive, judicial, and legislative, and then I would quit and go home and get a real job. So with the single executive order, we immediately declare the federal government of no authority, and I resign to become custodian of the federal government of the United States. And in this executive order, we appoint a custodian or a head of department, like a cabinet secretary kind of position, except that they're not a secretary of X. They're the custodian of X for the purpose of carrying out what is a more or less preordained plan laid out in this executive order. And each agency will have a different plan based on an analysis from an ethical perspective. For example, the VA. I'm a veteran. It's very near to my heart, so it's the one that I kind of start with. 22 veteran suicides a day. We have this massive bureaucracy where the American people who pay taxes want resources to go to help veterans, and they don't really do that effectively, and that's tragic. The VA doesn't need to be abolished. It can be privatized and spun off. It just can't be funded unethically with tax dollars. It is an existing organization with existing resources doing legitimate work that is helping people. It should be able to continue to do that. So what I'd like to see is, maybe we sell off all of the assets from everything else, and we fund certain endowments to certain agencies that now are privatized and spun off. The VA would be one of them, and for the VA, you can actually make it owned by a single ownership share. Every single veteran in America, put veterans in charge of the VA, I guarantee you won't end up with 22 veteran suicides a day. Something like the IRS, if we decide that we want to be nice to the IRS agents and not cut their hands off before we send them home, pretty easy. Hey, if you're not on the cleanup crew, as soon as January 21st comes around, you're done. Go home. You got your 2-month notice from the election to January. That's it. You got November, December, January to prepare. Clean out your desk. Go home. And I hope the IRS leaves sooner than that if possible. Some agencies, you can spin off and we say end the Fed. Well, when I say end the Fed, I mean end the federal government. But no, the answer for every question to a libertarian really is let the market decide, or I don't know. What should happen with the Fed? If the dollar exists in any functional way by the time someone can win on this platform, let the market decide. Let it be phased out peacefully, displaced with Bitcoin in a natural way. Some agencies need to be localized, as in actually transitioned down to the states. Department of Justice, Bureau of Prisons, right? You can't just say, oh, well, they don't exist, everybody go home, because you've got millions of prisoners. People
who murdered, raped, etc.
Yes, and now the majority of them are not criminals.
Oh, of course.
They're people who are in jail for victimless crimes, which are not crimes. So yeah, anything drug related, or anything that doesn't have a victim, right? So there needs to be a process for going through people's records and determining if they're an immediate threat to society, and if not, they get let out. I was very excited to just recently nominate Mark Edge of Free Talk Live as our secretary of the custodian of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, as someone who's done time and understands this ethical philosophy. I think he'd be great to oversee that process. I'd love to have Judge Napolitano as I don't even know what the title would be, custodian of the Department of Justice, because they wouldn't be the attorney
cool
general.
Guy.
Yeah, custodial attorney general, whatever the case would be, to administer that and as efficiently as possible let people out with the knowledge that they should be free to go. And the people that are a threat to society, you transfer them to state prisons, or you transfer the custody of them to the states. We're not talking about pulling the rug out from underneath anyone. And this is in my book, In Freedom, and to me, this is the most important idea that I think a lot of libertarians miss in terms of how we get from point A to B. You know, we don't want a revolution, we want an evolution. We want this to be peaceful. We want this to be in line with human values. We want to stay in touch with the love and the empathy that is the reason that we're activists in the first place. And it's because we care about these things. So with the campaign, I'll wrap this up. You ask what the plans are. You know, right now our movement is somewhere between 0.5% and 1% of the population. And what I'd like to do is use this as an organizing tool to grow the movement. And as we've seen in the past, political campaigns, if nothing else, are a great way to connect with people who don't understand this message. And I'd like to see the movement grow from, 1% to 10% over the next 3 years. I think that's that might be a very optimistic goal. It might not be this next election cycle. It might be 2 or 3 cycles before we get to that point. But I'm committed to keep running on this platform until the federal government ceases to exist one way or another, whether it's by a widespread secession movement or a collapse. But I want to avoid the collapse. Part of our message is we can do this the easy way or the hard way. The hard way is ignore the problem, keep your heads buried in the sand. The easy way is let's come up with a solution as big as the problem. And one way or another, this federal government cannot continue to exist forever. We localize it, we get it down to the states, to the counties, to the community level, at the city level, or at the county level, and that's where we're going to be able to displace government with nonviolent systems.
Well, I just wanted to quickly ask you, wrapping up, is there any, I talked to you the other night, I was kind of excited because I think I might have gotten to you a little bit about civil disobedience, because that's what brought so many people to your channel, and I know you can't do a whole lot without risking having to go to prison for a long time, but I wanted to ask you, are you going to jump over the Mexican border to the United States? I saw it on your Facebook. I really hope it happens. Is it going to happen?
I'm looking into it. I hear now that Donald Trump's president, it's impossible to sneak across the border, so I'm going to find out. But yeah, I'm really excited to get back into that. I'm honored that you would recycle some inspiration for me here this way. And it's funny that my most recent I do civil disobedience essentially all the time. My life is an act of civil disobedience. I'm homesteading, I'm creating an off-grid home. I'm using agorism and Bitcoin and, working under the table and all those things that I can do to minimize my contribution to the state. But, I'm still doing man on the street videos. Yeah. And last time I went out in Santa Monica, I was asked not to film. This guy who works for the city of Santa Monica, and I didn't even post the video. I have a video of him coming up to me going, "Hey, you're not allowed to film here. Do you have a permit?" I'm like, "Yes, I have a permit. It's called the First Amendment to the Constitution. Would you like me to read it to you?" And he's like, "Are you filming me?" And yes, of course we're filming you. You might want to not look like an idiot for a second here. So, and not all civil disobedience is necessary, but to make the points that we want to make to wake people up. But yeah, it is. I think it is critical because it does touch on what is a truly deeper spiritual element of our cause, which is the assertion of the individual human will against that which would suppress it. Yeah. And that is not just a struggle that is inherent in human development and human evolution that we see and we feel now at this point in human history, but it is also, I think, at the core of all of our internal struggles to realize our true selves and our true values and to live more in line with that. So yeah, there will be more, be bringing that spirit more into my work.
Excellent.
Thanks to you.
Well, no, I really appreciate it. I've been inspired by you for so many years, and it's good to just kind of give a little bit back. But thank you very much, Adam. It was great talking with you in person, and we'll be back at you with much more coming from here, beautiful Acapulco, Mexico. Gotta love it. Gotta love the temperatures. Better than Winnipeg, Canada, I'll tell you that much. And we'll be back at you with much more. Thanks again, Adam.
My pleasure.